On yesterday's episode of Locked on USC, I ripped into the Rivals rankings. They've just released their new top 300. Specifically, I was ripping into how it related to the USC commitments. Well, I've got some Tom Tom Topui feedback for y'all. Oh, and guess what? USC has the #1 ranked class again.
You are Locked on USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. Thank you. I'm your host, Mark Holkin. Thank you for making Locked on USC part of the Locked on Network your first listen every day. I don't care where you download this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, this show is always going to be free. And this show is always going to appreciate your support. Today's episode, it's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. USC is back, baby. So Georgia, they held on to that #1 class ranking for what? Less than 24 hours? And then all of a sudden, James Johnson, one of their 4-star commitments, he flipped. He decided he wants to go to Texas instead. And I think they actually released that flip when Steve Sarkisian was taking the stage at SEC Media Days. So USC back to #1. All is good in the world again, right? Right? Those are the important things, those mythical recruiting championships. Look, I tore into Rivals and Charles Powers pretty heavy yesterday. I like to be fair and balanced, so I got some feedback. And I thought, you know what? Let's bring it up. Let's talk about the rationale that went into. I went over, Kenai Pepe being them thinking he's the 299th best player in the country. I want to focus specifically in this first segment on Tom Tom Topui because he got disrespected more than anybody. So again, yesterday's episode, I said Charles Powers is either incompetent or biased. He's the director of scouting and rankings for the Rivals on 3 network. When you're talking about recruiting and you're talking about on 3, you say Rivals. If you're talking about the team, you say on 3. I know, confusing. That's the way it is for right now. When the new Rivals 300 was released on Monday, this is what Charles Powers said. The initial 2026 Rivals 300 is a culmination of everything we've seen to this point. Junior film, all-star games, and a ton of in-person evaluations over the past several months. The rankings set the table for the senior season, which is the most important evaluation point for Rivals, end quote. So as you know, they have TomTom outside the top 300, and they don't even rank him nationally at the defensive tackle position. In fact, Rivals believes there are 29 defensive tackles better than TomTom. Yeah, there's 29 better defensive tackles in the country, better than TomTom, according to at least Charles Powers, who is the head of rankings for Rivals. What's so interesting about that ranking, okay? 247. Their talent evaluators believe TomTom is the 10th best in the country. ESPN, they think he is ready for the NFL. He's one of the top 5 in the country. They have him at #4. So again, who do you want to believe? I mean, typically, if you take a poll of 10 people and 9 out of 10 dentists say dentine, why are you going to believe the one dentist that says Trident? Exactly. The more who share the same opinion, typically they have the better opinion. So one of the WeAreSC.com posters, his name is Austin, he asked Rivals to explain their Tom Tom Topui rating. Here's what Charles Powers' response was. He actually responded, which you give him credit. So how do you explain Tomohini Topui's rating? He was the MVP of the best league in the country by a mile. Here was the response. Our initial ranking of Topui was based on his film at Modern Day. He's got a very wide, compact build and is a light mover, really at his best when he can pinball around and get free to create disruption. He was one of our most anticipated in-person evaluations at Rivals 5-Star. He had an up and down day and probably lost more reps than he won, especially against the better offensive linemen that were there. For a prospect who is older, so well coached, and basically at his college NFL playing weight right now, we wanted to see more play strength and power on contact. There were a few occasions where he got washed out of the play once engaged with the offensive lineman. Still like his movement skills, though. No doubt, Topui had a nice season at Mater Dei. We don't really put a lot of emphasis if someone is a league MVP. We're really looking at the individual prospect and how their film, body of work, etc. stacks up with the rest of the position group. Topui had 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks as a junior. Even though it's not a very deep year at defensive line nationally, most defensive linemen in the Rivals 300 had comparable or better production. He's certainly a prospect who could end up as a 4-star for us, but we came out of the junior film and the first in-person evaluation wanting to see more as a senior in the postseason all-star setting. So right there at the very end, our first in-person, there wasn't a ton of in-person evaluation. And they really didn't give his work at Mater Dei a whole lot of credit either. So again, let's break this down and see where we can find some common ground. I'm going to do my best here. Like I said, I like to be fair and balanced. Number one, he said TomTom had an up and down day and probably, I want to underscore the word probably, lost more reps than he won, especially against the better offensive line guys that were attending. So again, question mark, probably? What does that mean? Did he or didn't he? I mean, I'm sure there's some film out there to back up this probability. Again, this is the Rivals 5-Star camp. It's exclusive. If you're part of the 247 network or at the time On3, ESPN, you weren't allowed to go to this event and evaluate it yourself. Whatever Rivals tells you, you got to go with. Here's the second point. This part. Especially against the better offensive linemen that were there, for a prospect who was older, so well coached, and basically at his college NFL playing weight, we wanted to see more yada 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 yada. Look, I get the age component that you're factoring in here. Sure, I get that. He might be a year older than your typical junior going into your senior season. Here's something else to keep in mind, though. A lot of guys are older at these camps. So unless Charles was literally charting each rep, including the age of the offensive lineman that TomTom was going up against, it kind of just sounds like someone's expectations weren't met, and they're kind of holding TomTom to a higher standard. This is a perfect example why I do my very best to not use the word expectation or not to expect anything. Look, when you expect something and you don't get it, you just seem to be let down more. So just, the way you train your mind. And again, I'm not quite clear about the whole size argument. 6'2", 330 pounds is what I think he tips in at right now. That's good size for an elite high school player. It's not like the guys who TomTom was going up against on the other side of the line, like they were small, undersized. I mean, we're talking about guys like, Felix Ojo. I mean, that's just one offensive lineman. And I watched some of his film. Dude was getting shredded. He didn't seem to drop that far, though, in the rankings. Again, this is the Rivals 5-Star camp. It's for the best talent out there, right? So are you saying that you expected TomTom to be way up here above everybody else? And because he wasn't, you're going to put him way down here below everybody else? That doesn't make sense. Here's the third thing I want to touch on. No doubt Topui had a nice season at Mater Dei. We don't really put a lot of emphasis if someone is a league MVP. We're really looking at the individual prospect, their film, body work, yada, yada, yada. I gave you a stat. He had 10.5 tackles for loss as a defensive tackle, nose tackle. 6.5 sacks. Those are good numbers when you play at the 1 or the 3 technique. especially the one. See, this is where Charles should lose his talent evaluator card. And this is why. When you say you don't care if someone won the MVP of the Trinity League, the best league in the country, and then you're going to compare his stats to those around the country, to players who are playing against lesser competition. Look, if I'm being honest, that logic has some serious flaws, right? Last year, Mater Dei, this was their out-of-conference schedule. They beat Centennial, which coached by Matt Logan, one of the top programs in Southern California that's not a private, parochial school. Bishop Gorman from Las Vegas, Kahuku from Hawaii, St. Francis from Maryland. That was their out of conference. Those are all nationally recognized elite programs. And then in conference, in the Trinity League, they beat up on Santa Margarita. They beat up on Orange Lutheran, St. John Bosco, J. Sarah, Servite. And then they beat Centennial again in the playoffs. Sierra Canyon in the playoffs. They beat De La Salle for the state championship. Keep all that in mind, okay? Now go ahead and name me 29 defensive tackles that are better in the country that played against that much talent, and then show me their stats. I dare you. Knock this off my shoulder. So again, I get it. It's one person's opinion. But when it's so far removed from everyone else's, I think it really deserves to be scrutinized. So I gave you Charles Powers' rationale, his explanation for why TomTom is not part of the top 300. So I passed that information along to one of my sources. So, someone who coaches, not going to tell you who, not going to tell you what level, just this is all you need to know. This person is one of the top talent evaluators in the game today, period, end of story. So I sent that to them, and this is the response I got. It was short and sweet. That's absolutely BS. This guy's game film compared to any of the top interior defensive line around the country, you can make that case that he's the best in the nation. He's legit against the run, and his ability to work the edges of guys, yeah, he can do that. The competition and the league he plays in should speak volumes when it comes to the competition compared to the other guys around the country. If he was committed to Oregon, Ohio State, or LSU, without a doubt, TomTom would be a 4 or 5 star. So there you go. That comes from somebody who coaches, not from somebody who's never played the game before. So with all that being said, I think it's going to be interesting to see how these camps go in the future, these rival 5-star camps. And think about this and hit me up with your comments. If you're watching on YouTube, hit me up in the comments section, hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, wearesc.com, wherever you can find me, LinkedIn. With NIL, right? And at least somewhat tied to the player rankings, they get their NIL valuation. The higher your rank, the better your NIL valuation. I'm starting to wonder now, how many players are going to start avoiding these camps? Stop going. Especially if it's going to affect their NIL, what they're worth. I mean, players right now in college, they already duck out of the postseason. We know they duck out of going to the combine, or at least doing certain things at the combine. So why would this be any different? I can see this happening. And one last note before I close out this segment, because some of you have a hard time understanding context. Y'all know how I feel about the star ranking system. Not a fan. Tell me who's recruiting you. I'll tell you if you're a good player. I'll tell you if you're an elite player. But some of you are having a hard time connecting, context to me saying I don't like the star system, but me talking about it and explaining it, especially when it relates to the USC players and why they're ranked where they are or not. So some of you, look, I can't use crayons. I'm sorry. I can't draw you a picture. But I can still talk about the rankings based on the criteria that the evaluators, like guys like Charles Powers, are using. So look, if you're still confused, sorry, the show doesn't come with a box of crayons. I can't draw a picture for you. You're gonna have to get some tutors. If you want me to slow down or give you your own special little course, hit me up. Be happy to do it for you. All right. A couple more segments coming up. So a couple of weeks ago, I submitted my top 30 players on this year's roster. Do a little bit of a report card review, see where we're at. And then the third segment, what if? What if things were different starting back in 2002? Summer sports, full swing. Major League Baseball All-Star Game tonight. Yeah. Whether you're all about baseball, I don't know, maybe you like golf. Maybe you like watching soccer, whatever it is. FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make every game a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game, let your friends hang out at the beach, get sunburned. You make some money. It's easy to use. It's fast to pay out, and it makes even all those regular season games, it makes them feel like much-watch events. Whether you're placing a same game parlay, watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, perfect time to sign up. New customers, you can bet $5 and you're getting $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I mentioned just a few seconds ago, a couple weeks ago, I submitted my top 30 Trojans list over there on WeAreSC.com. Me, Eric McKinney, Chris Arledge, Greg Katz. That's your Inside the Trojan Huddle panel show that we do. We compiled our list, sent it over to Eric, and now he's spitting out the results. Just a reminder, here's my top 30, right? I'm going to go 1 through 30. Shaden Mayava, Eric Gentry, Makai Lemon. That was number 3. Elijah Page, Keyshawn Silver, Kamari Ramsey, Jacoby Lane, Justin Taonu, Anthony Lucas, Desmond Stevens round out your top 10. Then it goes Cameron Fountain, Devin Tompkins, Tobias Raymond, Alani Noah, Jeonre Reed, DJ Wingfield at 16, even more so now with his eligibility issues. Kobe Pepe, Jamal Jarrett, Jahkeem Stewart, Waymon Jordan round out your top 20. Bishop Fitzgerald, Jade Abasiri, DJ Harvey, Marcellus Williams, Braylon Conley, Walker Lyons, Braylon Shelby, Walter Matthews, Sam Johnson, Hank Pepper, and for giggles, I threw in number 31, Sam Longstreet, the backup quarterback. Yes, I know Sam Heward, who's on Longstreet. Combine it. You get the point. So if you want to keep score, here is how the list turned out so far, going from number 30 towards number 1. These were the final results. Number 30, running back Brian Jackson. You noticed he didn't even make my list. Number 29, Braylon Conley. I had him rated number 25 on my list. 28, Jade Abasiri. Number 22 on mine. Cornerback DeCarlos Nicholson was number 27. Didn't make my cut. 26, Marcellus Williams. I had him at 24, so we're right there. Cornerback Chasen Johnson at 25. Didn't make my cut. Probably should have. 24, safety Christian Pierce. Again, same. Did not make my cut. Probably could have. Should have. 23, quarterback Husan Longstreet. As I mentioned, the backup quarterback was in my next 4 guys. the next 4 in, so to speak. And then 22, tight end Walker Lyons. I had him at number 26. Defensive tackle Jamal Jarrett at 21. I had him at 18. Offensive tackle Justin Taonu was number 20. I had him all the way up there at number 8. And then number 19, he was the latest release today over there at WeAreSC.com. Defensive lineman Jahkeem Stewart, number 19. Bingo. That's exactly where I had him slotted on my top 30 list. So the other day, on Monday's mailbag, got that question about Thanos haven't heard much. Well, I'll give you a little bit right now. How's that? Remind everybody he'll be wearing jersey number 4 this year. Kind of like his remember Joe McKnight from Louisiana? He wore jersey number 4. Rest in peace, Joe. So you got Thanos, Jahkeem Stewart, 6'5", 290 pounds. He turned 18 in May. It's a big young man. And he's already making an impression. As I said, I mentioned this on my Monday mailbag. Jahkeem Stewart has not played a lot of reps in high school. He's basically played his freshman and sophomore years. When I was a freshman, that was 9th grade, junior high. Didn't even call it high school yet. It was junior high school. As a sophomore, he had some good numbers. But he was ruled ineligible in 2024 due to transfer rules. He left St. Augustine High School in New Orleans, transferred to Edna Carr, and Louisiana school said, nope, can't do that. You don't get to play this year. However, as a sophomore in 2023, he recorded 85 tackles. 33 of those were for a loss. He had 20 sacks. Let me say that again. In one high school season, he had 20 sacks. They played 10 regular season games, I believe. And he also forced 6 fumbles, and he recovered 2 fumbles. Those are some good numbers. That's why everybody in the country, every major program, from the SEC conference to the Big Ten to the Pac-12, where everybody wanted Jahkeem Stewart. I mean, you see those numbers and you just start drooling, thinking, oh my God, if he continues to develop, he's going to do damage for USC. The early reports from the coaches coming out of spring camp is Jahkeem was all that in a bag of chips. Yeah, he's best thing since sliced bread. They actually anticipate him playing a lot this season. Inside, outside, he's going to play on the defensive line. He'll be part of the rotation. Where he could probably offer the most this coming season, his biggest contribution, just getting that pass rush up to a USC standard. Last year, well below par. And I get it. It didn't help that Bear Alexander quit or Anthony Lucas went down for the season with an injury. When you're losing your best 2 players on paper, it's going to affect the entire room. It's going to have a domino effect. The point still remains the same, though. USC needs to get back. They need to get into the opponent's backfield. They need to make the opposing quarterback, they need to make those guys' lives miserable. As Eric McKinney pointed out over there at WeRC.com. Stewart brings that natural ability to get into the backfield. He's going to be an important part of the 2 deep behind some talented veterans, and the USC coaches will have the ability to bring him along at whatever speed they choose. As I mentioned, he didn't play last year. So you're going to see him play, and he gets to break in, so to speak. Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue. It's a great way to break in. So it won't be surprising if he carves out a role for himself and is right in the mix during USC's most important games of the year. So again, you kind of dip your toes into the water beginning of the season against that out-of-conference schedule. You go on the road against Purdue. You come home against Michigan State. Those 4 games are going to be the perfect way to get him set for those important games on the back half of the season. Speaking of that, USC, they kick off their season in 45 days. 45 days. USC hosts Missouri State. The Bears. Beat the Bears. I'm going to keep you all updated on this list as we approach fall camp. But I just thought it was interesting. Jahkeem Stewart is considered the 19th most important player on the roster this year. Everyone seems to be in agreement among the 4 that were polled for this. So it's just, again, thought I'd bring you guys up to speed, let you know where we're at. And as we get close to fall camp, I'll give you some more. All right, one more segment to go. What if? What if things were different starting back in 2000, 2002? It's the off season for at least another week, right? That's when I head out to Las Vegas, big conference media days. I have dropped the 10 going forward. It is the big conference. If you saw yesterday's episode of Locked on USC, you understand where I'm going with this. So if you missed it, go watch it. It was a fun show yesterday, by the way. So there's a ton of stuff. There's just not a whole lot going on. There'll be a ton of stuff going on once we start media days and then spring camp, essentially less than a week later. I mean, right now, the coaches, they're still on their vacations. I think I saw Coach Zach Hansen and Annie and their new baby. They're all over the place. I think they were at a Yankee game recently. So everyone will be coming back from vacation soon enough. But when I've got idle time, I start thinking. My mind starts to wander. Yeah. And I start lamenting about what could have been. What if? So on Monday, I wrote my Monday's morass column. After games during the season, I use Mondays to kind of ask about certain what if scenarios, how things could have played out differently, positive, negatively, whatever. There was no game over this past weekend, but it got me. I was starting to think again. I'm thinking about the playoffs this year. I'm thinking, well, what if the playoffs had existed back during the Pete Carroll era? Spit that one out, Mark. During the Pete Carroll era. So I started thinking back, wondering how many more championships USC might have won had the playoffs existed when Pete was coaching the team. And then everything going forward past that. So what if the college football playoffs existed in 2002? I think there's a really good chance USC would have won at least 2 to 3 more national championships. At least. I'm being conservative. At least 2 to 3 more. Back in 2002, Carson Palmer won the Heisman Trophy. They won 11 games. They beat Brad Banks, Iowa, who was the Heisman runner-up that year. So I believe Iowa was ranked number 3 going into that Orange Bowl game. USC was number 4 or number 5. They throttled them. It wasn't even once Iowa ran back the opening kickoff for a touchdown, it was game over for them. In that season, USC's only losses on the road against an 11-2 Kansas State team. Remember that game when Mike Williams was all thumbs? On the road, in overtime, in conference against a 10-3 Washington State team. And if you want to use the BCS metrics, which they were a part of at that time, USC had the toughest schedule in the country. Yet they weren't considered one of the 2 best teams. They had 2 losses. Meanwhile, if you remember, Ohio State, they went on to defeat Miami in that championship game. But I still remember Kirk Herbstreit's words. He was calling the action for that game. It still rattles around in my head. And I'm paraphrasing, but after the Buckeyes beat Miami, Kirk said, I'm not sure the Buckeyes or the Hurricanes want anything to do with this Trojans team right now. There's no hotter team in the country than USC. He's right. Consider this. During the BCS era, USC played for 3 consecutive national championships from 2003 through 2005. They won 2 straight. And the one they lost, they were cheated when Vince Young's knee was down. Instant replay wasn't working for some reason. It worked when USC had the ball, but not when Texas had the ball. 2006, that was another snub for Pete Carroll. I say 2006, USC fans says 13-9. Yeah, remember 13-9, last regular season game? But their record would have put them in the playoffs, especially if we're talking about the 12-team playoff right now. 2007, USC 11-2. That's another playoff berth. 2008, it literally took a sniveling Tim Tebow speech. That's what kept USC out of the playoffs. USC had the best defense in the country that year. 1 loss. Their defense was giving up less than 10 points per game. That team, if they were in the playoffs, wins the national championship. I guarantee it. They would smoke Oklahoma or Florida. Of course, you had 2011. The sanctions kept USC on the outside looking in. You can take into consideration 2016, 2017, 2022. Again, just throwing those out there. So all of those opportunities, USC did not make the playoffs had they had them, or they would have made them. How many championships would they have won had the playoffs existed back then with those teams that I brought up? 2, 3, 4? You let me know. What do you think? Hopefully, 2025, USC can make the playoffs for the first time in school history. I know a lot of people out there don't think that's going to happen. They think 2026 is the year to make that happen. Don't forget last year how many close games they lost. Hopefully, that'll be a learning experience. Learning how to win close games is what champions are all about. You know what I'm all about? Coming back tomorrow with another episode of Locked on USC. We're at the end of this one. But when you're done making Locked on USC your first listen every day, your first watch every day, and you're done with the Locked on Network, maybe you watch Brian Smith over there at the portal. You can catch that show on YouTube. Get on over there to wearesc.com. Tons of information. A lot of recruiting stuff. Like I said, we're close to media days. Fall camp's right around the corner as well, which means the season 45 days away. All right, everyone. Another episode of Locked on USC will be coming at you tomorrow. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.